There are two different ways to draw two lines in the same plane. Parallel lines are always coplanar. In geometry, that symbol with the two vertical lines, sometimes it's on a slant, but those two lines together means is parallel to. So K parallels M, we see that, it means line K is parallel to line M, and we can see that in our first diagram here. So this goes with this. The red arrows on the diagram indicate that the lines are parallel. So when you see those arrows, they mean parallel. Sometimes they don't look like arrows. Sometimes they look kind of like an arrowhead, like I have written below there. So this, when you see that symbol, means parallel. Intersecting lines are also coplanar. If we put a slash through that parallel symbol, that means that line N is not parallel to line P. So parallel lines are coplanar. Intersecting lines are coplanar. Do you remember the kinds of lines that are not coplanar? We had skew lines. Right? So skew lines are not coplanar. They're on different planes. We're going to be talking about intersecting lines and parallel lines in this lesson. And we're going to learn the names of some angles that are formed when we have lines that intersect. So this is in your notes. It is an important definition. It's the word transversal. And transversal is a line that intersects two other lines at distinct points. It could be more than just two lines. So next to that intersects two, you write in or more, right? Because it could intersect three lines, for instance. Here are two lines, and here is a transversal. The lines cut by a transversal may or may not be parallel. We can't assume that our lines are parallel, right, until we prove that our lines are parallel. And actually, the angle names that we're going to learn are not dependent on whether or not the lines are parallel. So a transversal is a line that intersects two or more lines in the same plane. When lines intersect, angles are formed in several locations. Certain angles are given names that describe where the angles are located in relation to the lines. These names describe angles, whether the lines involved are parallel or not parallel. So we're going to learn some names of angles. And right now, those are just names. Right? Until we can prove something true about them, they're just the names, and they're based on the position of the angle relative to the two lines or the transversal. In your diagram, I'd like you, line 1 and line 2 are labeled, but if you could label transversal, oh, I have it below. Transversal is labeled. Never mind. Let's continue on. When a transversal intersects two lines, 8 angles are formed. These angles are given special names. So here I've tried to have this diagram look like those two lines, K and M, are not parallel. I think we feel pretty confident that those lines do not appear to be parallel at all. Because the name is not dependent on whether the lines are parallel or not. So here we have two lines that are parallel. Here we have two lines that are not parallel, but the names of the angles will be the same. And so I'm going to label them on both diagrams. Right? And so if we look over here, we have some vocabulary words, and these are in your notes. I don't have the picture in your notes, but I have the words above in your notes. So interior means between the lines. Right? Interior is shown here. On the other diagram, this is interior. And you don't have the diagram in your notes, but that's okay. My purpose is to show you that the positions and the names aren't dependent on the lines being parallel or not. Exterior means outside the lines. Actually, let's go through all the words, and then I'll change and write them on the other picture. So exterior means outside the lines. So there we see if we're above the upper line or below the lower line, that's the exterior. Alternate means alternating sides of the transversal. One on the right, one on the left, or the other way around. One on the left, one on the right. Consecutive means next to, and corresponding means the same relative position. And we're going to go through all of these words with a diagram. Let's go back to our other picture here, and we'll label some things. So this would be exterior. This is exterior. This would be alternating. 3 and angle 5 there are alternating because they're on opposite sides of this line. That's the transversal. And we know this is the transversal because it intersects two lines. The other two lines do not intersect two lines, at least as the diagram is shown. All right, so angle 3 and angle 5 are examples of alternating. Angle 4 and angle 8 are examples of corresponding. And let's talk why they are corresponding. All right, so you notice both those angles are below a line. Right? 4 is below line K, 8 is below line M. I'll write that in. So 4 is below line K, and 8 is below line M. You know, I had lots of space over here on the left-hand side, but some reason I decided to jam everything on the right. That's okay. I think it's still readable. And also, one other thing, notice that 4 is on the right side of the transversal. We're going to abbreviate trans, and I just noticed that below does not normally have an E in it, or it has one E but not two. So below line M and to the right side of the transversal. That's what makes those corresponding. They're in the same relative position relative to a line and the transversal. Let's go through all those vocabulary words and define them with a little bit more detail. So we've already seen this page. And of course there's some extra information here. Those arrows on lines 1 and line 2, or line BC and line DE, indicate that our lines here are parallel. And the line that cuts through those two lines, that's a transversal. The names of the lines, though, don't depend on whether the lines are parallel or not. We're just learning the names right here. So you have this in your notes, corresponding angles. So sometimes I don't normally abbreviate corresponding angles with the CA because I think that could be confusing. I'm going to show you another abbreviation because it looks like California. All right. It's a few more letters, but no one's confused by that. All right, so that's how you can abbreviate corresponding angles. You put CA and people might think California. All right, so corresponding angles are angles that are on the same side of the transversal in the same relative position at the two intersections. So here it's kind of color-coded for you. Yours is not color-coded. Feel free to color code. If you're in the class watching it, I have lots and lots of highlighters. So angle 1 and angle 5 are corresponding angles, the ones that are highlighted in blue, because they're to the left side, they're above a line and to the left of the transversal. Actually, let's write that in. I'll color code my words. So above and left. Angle 2 and angle 6 are corresponding angles. Those are above. And that's a V there. Above and to the right. Right? They're both above a line and to the right of the transversal. We have two more pairs, angle 4 and angle 8. And I'm not going to try to write in yellow because you won't be able to read it very well. Right? So those are below and right. And angle 3 and angle 7, highlighted in green, are below and left. So we call them corresponding because they're in the same relative position based on the line and the transversal. So you might want to write this in your notes to help it make sense for you. And I recommend highlighting those. Just ask for a highlighter if you need one. All right, let's continue on and learn another angle relationship, another angle position. Alternate interior angles. So this is in your notes as well, but the writing is not there. Let's add a few things. Let's first of all write interior between those two lines there. Let's add that. All right, so between line M and N, that's the interior. We have two pairs of alternate interior angles. So alternate interior angles are two non-adjacent interior angles that lie on opposite sides of a transversal. In your notes, I want you to add angle 4 and angle 6. They're written in black. Angles 1 and angle 3, written in green. Of course, in your notes, they're all written in black. Those are alternate interior angles. So add that to your notes so you know where they're located. Let's look at another definition. Alternate exterior. One thing I want you to write in your notes, I want you to add that this and this is the exterior, right? It's not, so if you're not the interior, you're the exterior. And you're either above the top line or below the bottom line. In your notes, I want you to add a few things. And as I look, you don't have the angles I added. So make sure you've got all 8 angles there showing. And I want you to write angle 5 and angle 2, angle 6 and angle 8 are alternate exterior angles. So alternate exterior angles are two non-adjacent exterior angles that lie on opposite sides of a transversal. So basically it's the same thing as an alternate interior angle, except you're not between the two lines, you're outside the two lines. That's the only thing that's different. But they are on opposite sides of that transversal. And one more vocabulary word. And there's 2 names for this. Right? And so I want you to make sure you have both names. And I do have what I have on the bottom there already typed into your notes. You'll just need to add the other information that I have. Let's first write interior, just to remind ourselves where the interior is. So same side interior angles, or they're also called consecutive interior angles. I'm going to abbreviate that because otherwise I won't fit it in. Are interior angles that lie on the same side of a transversal. All right, so angles 1 and angle 4 are same side interior or consecutive interior angles. And angle 3 and angle 6 are same side or consecutive interior angles. All right, so these angles are more commonly called consecutive interior angles when the lines are parallel. However, it is not wrong to call them same side interior or consecutive interior, whether the blinds are parallel or not. I tend to use consecutive interior. You could use either, but make sure you understand that there's two names for these angles. Okay? And make sure you have this information in your notes. It will help you remember their names and where they're located, because that's going to be very important in these upcoming lessons. All right, so here, if the words look fuzzy on the bottom, don't worry, they'll come into focus. So here we're going to classify each pair of angles as alternate interior, same side interior, corresponding angles, or none of these. Right. Now, to make things even more interesting, we have two lines and two transversals. The reason I didn't give this to you as a problem for you to do is because I made this a little tougher. So I decided that we would do it together. Right? So let's take a look at our pairs of angles and our lines. First of all, whether you're a transversal or not depends upon which line we're talking about. Let's label these lines so we have a way to talk about them. So I'm going to call you line M, and I'll call you line N, and I'll call you line O, and I'll call you line P. So if we're talking about lines N and line M, either line O or line P is the transversal. If we're talking about line O and line P, either line M or line N is a transversal. So notice there's two sets of lines, and each one of them has two different transversals. Notice around each transversal, whichever way you're looking, there are 8 angles. Right? So we're only going to be talking about one set of 8 at a time. So each time that we're talking, I'm going to label which line is the transversal for this problem, right? Because it depends on which angle we're talking about. So for instance, if we're talking about angles, we'll start the first numbers. If we're talking about angles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, line O and line P are the lines, and the magic of technology, line M is the transversal. Right? So line M is the transversal for this set of angles. Okay. If we're talking about angles, I'll go in order again. 1, 2, 5, 6. Actually, I'll go in the bottom here. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I had to decide which ordering I wanted to do these in. And while my oval is not large enough, at least it's facing the right direction. Come on, move over just a little bit. All right, well, that's good enough then. All right, so if we're talking about these angles there, line O and line P are still the line. And now line N is the transversal. Let's kind of move this. Oh, I wonder if I can. It's probably going to be easier to just draw a new oval, but let's see if I can turn it. If we're talking about angles 1, 2, 5, 6, 9, 10, 13, and 14, now lines N and M are the lines. They're the lines we're talking about. And line P is the transversal. And, can I turn it again? There we go. If we're talking about angles 3, 4, 7, 8, 11, 12, 15, and 16, over here, then line N and M are the lines, and line O, like to make the noises, is the transversal. Okay? So I'm going to get rid of the oval because it will eventually get in our way. And I'll just move the word transversal next to who's the transversal for each question. All right, so angle 7, and you think of the answer before I write it up and see how many you get right. It's a multiple choice here. You got 4 choices. All right, angle 7 and angle 12. Let's circle them. Good idea to circle them when you're trying to answer questions. Angle 7 and angle 12. Well, my transversal's in the right location. They're along line M and N, and line O is the transversal. What could they be called? Notice they're on opposite sides of line O, and they're between line M and line N. They are alternate interior angles. And look at that, there's still more alternate interiors there. Let's try the next set. Angle 3 and angle 6. All right, I'm just going to move my circles. So there's angle 3, and there's angle 6. O and P are the lines now. The transversal is line M. Notice that's intersecting lines O and P to create those 8 angles up there. All right, and notice they are between lines O and P, opposite sides of line M, the transversal. Why, they must also be alternate interior angles. It's a popular answer. How about 6 and 11? Angle 6 and angle 11. I can leave angle 6, just have to move angle 11. All right, now let's think. All right, angle 6 is along line P. So should that be the transversal? But angle 11 is along line O. Should that be the transversal? Well, in this case, neither one of these is the transversal because those angles are not created by a single line intersecting 2 other lines. They are none of these. They're on different sets of lines. So they don't have any relationship at all. Angle 7 and angle 11. All right, so now line O is the transversal. All right, they're created by line O intersecting line M and line N. They are between line M and line N, but they're not on different sides of line O. They're on the same side. Why, they must be, I hit the extended page. They are same side interior. And if you know from the last podcast, the only way I can unextend a page is to go back to the previous page and come back. And now, ta-da! But we better move the same side interiors so that they are not, so I don't keep hitting the extended page. All right, so now on to the next set, 4 and 10. All right, so I'll move this one here and this one here. Now I hope you can get the answer. Notice 4 is along line O and 10 is along line P. They're not created by the same transversal. So therefore, none of these. All right, got 3 more to go. 14 and 16. Now the transversal is line N. Those angles are created by line N intersecting lines P and line O. They are on the same side of line N, but they are not between the lines. Each one is to the right of the line. They are in the same relative position. Therefore, they are corresponding angles. To your left. Angles 2 and angle 3. All right, so they're formed when line N intersects line O and line P. So line M's the transversal. They're between lines O and line P. They're on the same side of line M, so they are same side interior. There's only one choice left. Angle 2 and angle 10. Right? So they're created by line P intersecting line M and line N. They're both on the right side of line P. They're both above a line, same relative position, their corresponding angles. And there we go. I have some as a whiteboard practice for you, and another practice on this particular Nearpod lesson where you're going to identify corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior, consecutive interior, and then a review, vertical angles and linear parangles. All right, bye for now.